Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? It is Wednesday, it's that time of the week again. We're getting our scouting caps on, the binoculars are out, we've got our little scouting notepad and pen, and we're going around European and world football looking for the next players that Celtic might be ideating to bring in to reinforce Brendan Rodgers' squad ahead of hopefully another monumental season, maybe trying to go one step further, dare I say that out loud, in the Champions League, as well as continuing our domestic dominance, looking ahead to title 56, maybe even looking forward to treble number 10. In this week's video, we're following the lead of the rumour mill again, and this time it's actually going to take us a little bit closer to home. We're going down south and we're going to England. But for Celtic fans all around the world, you kind of know already, we don't actually really do shopping in the English Premier League. It's just a little bit too rich for our blood, sadly, the way that football economics, wages, transfer fees, all that stuff tends to go. It just is super inflated, and we're just never really involved in those transfer circles, as it were. So normally when we're shopping in England, as Celtic fans or as Celtic, we're looking at the Championship, we're looking at League One, maybe we're looking at some players that get relegated out of the Premier League, or maybe some that are getting promoted that know they're probably going to be surplus to requirements and maybe even replaced by their current club in the upcoming transfer window. And in the video today, that's the sort of players we're going to be looking at today, because like I mentioned, the rumour mill has kind of led us down this way. There's a few players in the English Championship that Celtic again are hotly linked to signing and bringing in the summer. At any point in the video today, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We're pushing for 18,888 subscribers, and we cannot do that without your support. So if you do enjoy the content here, hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit a like on the video as well if you do enjoy it, of course. And get into the comment section in this one and let me know what you think about the tail of the tape, about the roster of players that we're looking at today. Are any of them Champions League level? Are any of them actually going to lift the level of the club? And do they fit the mould of the sort of player that we're looking to bring in? Always interested to see your guys' thoughts and feelings in the comment section, because the comment section is always on fire on the Celts Are Here videos. But yeah, let's just get stuck straight into this one, because like I mentioned, the rumour mill has kind of led us down the path of looking at these players in these leagues yet again, and it's kind of came twofold. We've had a little bit of the tabloid rumours going around, as it were, and then we've also got friend of the channel maybe giving us a wee bit of insight to one or two bits and pieces as well. As you guys know, you'll normally find me on Axom on a Monday afternoon alongside Paul John Dykes, usually Kev Graham the poet, and sometimes we're joined by the bold Asim. But this Monday it was just me, PJ, and Kev Graham the poet, and Kev Graham the poet reckons as soon as the season is signed, sealed and delivered, Celtic are going to announce a pre-contract free transfer of Josh Brownhill. Now, this is a player we were actually really closely linked to. I forget if it was January or the summer. I think it was January. So this is a player that's kind of been on the radar for us a little bit already. Burnley have been promoted. They're going back into the Premier League this year. And Josh Brownhill has been ever present. He's been quite a consistent Burnley player over the last decade or so under the different kind of guises we've seen them, you know, from the Sean Dyche era, the Vincent Kompany era. Now they've got Scott Parker in. They're trying to play a bit more actual football rather than the Sean Dyche kind of effort. As you can see in his last 5 games here in the Championship, he has been rated on average 77 out of 100. And this gets really impressive when you look at the last 15 games. His average rating out of 100 is 63, which is incredible. But over his last 40, and obviously the longer period you're looking at here, to have the average so high makes it even more impressive. He's averaging 58 out of 100. And as we know, the Championship is a 40-game season. It's grueling. It's weekend to midweek all season long, and there is no rest for the wicked. Josh Brownhill has been a mainstay in the Burnley midfield, in the engine room, in the attacking positions, a big set piece taken, and been one of the main catalysts, one of the main reasons for their domination of the English Championship this year. And if we have a look at his graph, his scores and everything he's been doing over the last year, over the last 12 months, he's had 39 starts, which has produced 18 goals and 6 assists. A very prolific, a very end product heavy playmaker midfielder, especially in a dominant team like Burnley. This is a really good parallel for Celtic, because the way Burnley have been playing, I would even say for the last 2 years, if we can just zoom out a little bit more. Where if you kind of wind back to Vincent Kompany's Burnley in the Premier League, you can see like this is a nice little patch of form that I've found here. A very capable operator at the Premier League level for a team that is losing every single week. He's got to be effective in duels. His pass completion, crosses into the box, everything has to be effective, has to be on point, and the positives have to outweigh the negatives. And I think we've clearly seen that from when he's been Vincent Kompany's Burnley team here in the Premier League. And then if we combine this season's championship, which is like this section of the graph kind of here from this point onwards, give or take, and then the last championship campaign that they had with Vincent Kompany when they got promoted to the Premier League, you can see this isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't an unusual thing for Josh Brownhill. He's been there, done it. He's actually really tried and tested at the level he's been operating at. A match winner, a clear playmaker, a guy that knows where the back of the net is. And over these campaigns in the championship, 80 games, 25 goals, 14 assists, very, very credible numbers. And as we can see here from the positions he's played for Burnley across this time, he has got a lot of versatility. He's had a good stint playing actually at right mid. He's had a bit of a stint actually starting at left striker, 2 games there. Left centre midfield seems to be quite a prominent position for him. Left centre defensive midfielder, quite prominent again. Left attacking midfielder, not too many of them. Right midfield, right centre mid, right defensive mid. There's quite a series of games where he's played in those positions. Actual centre midfielder, only a few of them. Centre attacking midfielder, a little bit of it. But as you can see, like this guy can play all across. If you think about Celtic's shape and how our tactics run, he could play in any 3 of the midfield spots, and he could play in those wider areas as well for us. So extreme versatility, and at 29 years of age, a bit of a veteran, a guy that's been around the block once or twice, knows a thing or two. Is currently the captain of Burnley, it turns out. He's also won the Football League trophy. I'm not sure if that's the Johnston Paint or the League Cup. I think it's like the Johnston Paint type of thing, as well as winning the actual championship itself. He's actually valued at the moment at €13 million, but like Kev Graham, the poet, was telling us, he's going to be signing a pre-contract with Celtic. He's actually out of contract in the summer, and this is a move that I kind of like. This gives me a wee bit of the Chris Commons kind of vibes in terms of the player profile, maybe a bit of the attributes and whatever as well, where, you know, like, he likes to take a shot, he likes to take a cross, he's not shy in that regard, and you know, he's rough and ready. He'll get stuck in the midfield areas. But maybe the number one question for a player like Brownhill, who has played in the Premier League and the Championship exclusively, is will he make the step up to Champions League level football? And I think for players that are like very much at the top end of the Championship and even in the Premier League, that's a very similar level to so many European opponents that we're going to play against. The difference is a little bit of like the atmosphere, the flavour of the occasion, the pressure of playing for us, and the expectations on winning every single match. Those mentality, those personality traits, they're a little bit of the unknowns here. But again, at 29 years of age, you kind of expect that the guy's not going to be a tearaway, or he's going to be like disrupting the harmony of the changing room or anything like that, especially being a captain, being a leader for some pretty good coaches and some pretty successful sides already. As a free transfer, this does feel like a very easy transfer for Celtic to push the button on. And I really think one of the main things I really like about this move is the versatility that he offers. He sincerely can cover 5 or 6 different positions for us, depending on how you think of the Celtic squad makeup and maybe any evolution that we might see into the tactics and the formation when we get Kieran Tierney in on board as well, who's also a free transfer. So we've got a little bit of intel, a little bit of insight into the Josh Brownhill move, and let's see if that one actually pans out. But the tabloids and newspapers have been back again, linking us to Million Manhoff of Stoke City. Now, Million Manhoff is a player I'm quite familiar with from when he was in Holland before moving to Stoke City. Him alongside, maybe I could list about 5 of them. There was like 5 quite exciting defenders that all kind of emerged in the Eredivisie around the same time. Some of them are in England, some of them have moved up the food chain in Holland, and maybe 1 or 2 of them are around European football. I don't think any of them have really broke out in a big way. And Million Manhoff was one of the ones that was expected to have one of the highest potential ceilings. And this guy has quietly went about his business in the Championship, showing himself to be a really effective player at that level. But Stoke City, sadly, have been a bit of a basket case. They've never really been in the title push, the promotion push out of the Championship since he's been there. And they've often been kind of flirting with danger in and around the lower mid-table kind of situation here. It displays him here as being a right mid, right forward, a cam, but when this guy broke through at Vitesse Arnhem, he actually started his career off as more of a left mid and left wing back, a fullback, don't get me wrong, but an attacking based fullback. You can see his Vitesse have been rubbish. I don't think they're even in the Eredivisie anymore, and this time when he was there, I think they even got relegated. So a really poor side that weren't winning very many matches, but from left back, left wing back was super effective. Now he is left footed, but as you can see, even with Vitesse, they very quickly started playing him on the right, even tried him up front a couple of times for themselves. Now I don't know if he's like two-footed or anything like that. As we've seen for Stoke, they're playing him a lot on the right, and a guy with a really good left foot on the right hand side can be very effective. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that. But even Vitesse tried him out on the right hand side here as well. So I don't know if he's got ambidextry, like he's quite two-footed, or if it is quite exclusively like cutting in and really pinging one with the left foot. Over the last year, he's made 37 starts, 11 sub-appearances for Stoke, with 9 goals and 6 assists and a penalty one, which is not too bad going considering how rubbish they are. And, you know, he is one of the forwards that's really carrying the load of scoring goals, etc. As we can see from his scores, he does have peaks, he does have moments where he's been a match winner, he's really standing out here, but he's been in and out the squad. This is a guy that I've known to have some injuries here and there, and this is something that still kind of, I don't know if I want to say plagues him, but certainly comes around every so often. We've been linked to him a number of times, which makes me think it's maybe just a little bit of tabloid recycling, regurgitation again and again, but it certainly has the profile of being one of those up-and-coming young players that's definitely made progression and development by moving to the English Championship from Holland, but hasn't excelled, hasn't super like kicked on to the extent where other teams in that league are dying to buy him, or anyone from the Premier League is looking to pull him up a level. So he's still in that kind of limbo of being like a really good player at that level. Maybe Stoke City are pricing him as being quite an expensive player, I don't know, but quite exclusively a right mid, a right attacking midfield player here, even a striker for Stoke. So very much an attack-based player. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about this move potentially is if he is going to be signed by us to be another one of our wingers, we know he can play left back. Is he maybe the handcuff, the cover for Kieran Tierney, as well as being potential first team player to play in the front three, or a rotation option in the depth for the front three, as well as being in the depth for left back? So again, similar to Brownhill, a player that actually covers a bucket ton of positions, and with a current transfer value of €3.5 million, Stoke City probably have a sell-on clause to honour, so maybe we need to pay a little bit more just because they'll have a clause to satisfy or whatever. He's made 19 caps for the Netherlands under-21s, scoring 6 goals, which is a very good return, which for a guy that predominantly starts out as a fullback is very, very good going. He is contracted to Stoke City until 2027, so you know, he's got a wee bit of time left on that contract that, you know, they might have a wee sell-on clause for. Very well decorated at youth level as well. And like, this is a guy that if we can get cheap enough, this feels very much similar to a Paulo Bernardo type signing for me. A guy that's got good international pedigree but hasn't really kicked on enough where other teams of our kind of calibre are jumping to go and sign him, and it would take somebody to go on a bit of a limb to bring him in, really believe in their potential and invest time and effort into building them up and really helping them realise their full potential. With the physical attributes this guy has, his pace and his power in particular, I think this is going to be a guy that Brendan Rodgers would very much enjoy having at the club. But, you know, if he is available at that type of price, there will be some other interest in it. And yeah, it might just be a wee bit harder to get over the line. And this is a move that if we were like pushed above the budget for it, with Bernardo, I was really happy with the way we did the business. We kept Bernardo to being like a £4 million transfer or something like that. And with Adam Ida, it kind of went in the opposite way, where we ended up paying a little bit more. Arne Engel's the same. So this is one that if it did go over the value a little bit, if we had to pay like €6 or €7 million for a guy like this, I wouldn't be too bothered because of a lot of the raw attributes he has. And at 23 years of age, he's got some serious miles on the clock. If we look at when he debuted in the Eredivisie, the 2021 season, we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago now at this point for a 23-year-old. He's had some European experience as well with Champions League qualifiers, as well as the Conference League and all that kind of jazz as well. So a guy that's had a number of different experiences in cups and different leagues and tournaments and all the rest of it. And overall, again, look at that. Like, he can genuinely play everywhere on the pitch. Up front, centre back, and everywhere else in between. So a real Swiss Army knife of a guy who's technically classified as a right winger. But again, if we can get this done for the right price, it's something I would be very interested and excited to see Celtic pull off. Another player we were loosely linked to in one of the recent transfer windows that I would very much encourage us to go back for is Shea Charles, who currently finds himself at Sheffield Wednesday. The Northern Ireland international is only 21 years of age right now, and he is basically just like Josh Brownhill, but a bit younger. He plays a bit deeper in the pitch. He's got a good nose for, like snuffing out danger, a good nose, a good football IQ is probably the best way of putting it. And in the last 12 months for Sheffield Wednesday, he's had 42 games, 1 game off the bench, 1 goal, 5 assists. So much more of a kind of build-up player rather than like the Brownhill type, which is a bit more kind of arrowhead and a bit more like an actual attack-based playmaker. Shea Charles is a bit deeper, so he's much more involved in duels and tackles as well as all the set-piece stuff as we see here. And he's not quite, and again, Sheffield Wednesday are not the same team as Burnley, but he's not quite got the same goal contributions. I say 1 goal, 5 assists over 42 games as a starter. But as you can see here in terms of the statistics and his performances he's had for Sheffield Wednesday, he has been an exceptional performer. He's actually caught the eyes of a number of different clubs across the UK, and I don't think if we went for Shea Charles we would be the only ones in the fight for this kid. Over the last 3 games of the season, they were even playing him as a ball-playing centre-back as well, which just shows, again, the versatility, the quality that he has, not just on the ball, but positionally, tactically, and physically as well, being that kind of centre-back mould of a midfielder. And really looking over his performances across the whole season, it's quite consistently a similar sort of picture that we're seeing here. Some highs where, he's influential in the game with assists and that sort of thing, but for the most part, Sheffield Wednesday don't really win lots of games, especially consecutively. And even in those games, he's not totally useless. He's not a non-contributor. He's still contributing very good numbers in terms of dual success, tackles, as well as all those kind of soft ones that we like build-up play, progressive passing, etc. And when we come to look at his profile, this is a transfer that I think would be very busy because he's currently on loan at Sheffield Wednesday, so his loan with them ends this summer, and he'll go back to his parent club, Southampton. Now, Southampton, when they got promoted to the Premier League, I think it was not this time, but last time they got relegated, they bought 5 guys from Man City, Romeo Lavia, Edozie, a bunch of guys. Shea Charles was one of them, and they still own him. They didn't play him this season when they got promoted with Russell Martin. They loaned him out to the Championship again with Sheffield Wednesday. And Southampton have been relegated again, so maybe they want to use Shea Charles next year for themselves to help them dominate the Championship and maybe go and get promoted back into the Premier League. But like we've seen so many times before with relegated clubs, when they get parachute payments, they've got a bloated squad, they do want to cash in on some assets so they can reformat, redesign their league. Southampton will almost certainly be hiring a new manager, so they'll need to kind of rebuild in a lot of different areas. And a guy like Shea Charles could very easily find himself available for transfer. He's got 25 caps for Northern Ireland as well, which is just a good kind of omen for Celtic players, isn't it? Can play at right back as well as centre back, as we've seen earlier on. And his contract with Southampton is up in 2027. So he's at that kind of sweet point where if they are going to sell him on, now would probably be a good time to do it for them before they get into the last year of the contract, and where are they all at with different, players in and out, that sort of thing. So it could be a good time to pounce on a player like this. And like I mentioned before, a former Man City kid, and we've had such success with bringing players from the City Football Group, from the Man City football machine, the factory that they've got down there, that it feels again like another really good omen. He's won the English Youth League, he's won the Under-21 Premier League, he's maybe got a Premier League medal. It's denoted here that he's a Premier League winner, but again, we've seen with some of these bigger clubs on Transfermarkt, their youth players just getting accredited with league wins that they probably don't even have the medal for. So a guy still at the very beginning of his career, and at 21 years of age, with this kind of background that he has, he's got a wee bit of maybe the Matt O'Reillys about him as well, but he's still looking to show himself as being an elite operator. Playing for a team that will dominate and win cups as well as play Champions League, I think would be very much on his radar as a good opportunity for him to advance his career. And this is a guy as well that has got a good growing reputation in England, that if he did have to spend 10 to 15 million euros on him, if he does well, if he hits the ground running and we can develop him, it's still easily a player that could be moved on for a profit later on, because we know Celtic love to spend net zero on every transfer window. So this is a guy that could maybe help us in the future in that sense. A very exciting player, might be a wee bit punchy, a wee bit expensive, and especially if we are signing Josh Brownhill for a 3, maybe a bit unlikely we go and get another guy in that mould, similar to Shea Charles. And then speaking of relegations and all the rest of it, Plymouth have sadly been relegated themselves, and they made some nice recruitments in the January window here to try and save their soul, to try and SOS them to stay in the Championship. Sadly, to no avail, it didn't work out. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure all the agents that I heard of European-based players that were dealing with Plymouth wanted relegation exit clauses in the deal, in the contract, and one of the players that they got over the line was Maxim Talaverov. Now, he's a Ukrainian youth international that I watched in a Euro under 21 a few years ago. He's 24 now, and I was very impressed with. He never really showed, he showed great potential and great promise, but I thought this could be a guy we could get really cheap and might turn into something, but wasn't really that great where it's like, oh, Celtic should buy him and he can really be a guy for us and all the rest of it. But he did okay in Austria since leaving, I forget where he was before, if it was Ukraine or maybe Serbia or something like that. He did okay in Austria, did pretty well. And then when he went to Plymouth, he made so many headlines with their FA Cup run, scoring headers, goal line clearances against Man City, and he really showed himself as being like a proper top-end, no-nonsense defender. Maybe ball-playing skills are something that need to be developed still, but this is a guy at 24 years of age that's going to find himself somewhat unattached in this window. And sadly, there won't be the FA Cup results in his tail of the tape that we find here with his Sorare scoring matrix results that we look at here. But even in the Championship, bearing in mind how low Plymouth have been, he's still a guy that despite all the goals they're conceding, he's still putting in a good score. The goals conceded take points away from him for all the good work that he's been doing. So when we see these matches where they've conceded a lot and he still scored kind of okay, it kind of underlines the contribution he's been making here. Well, Las Glins in the Austrian League has also played a little bit of Conference League this season, so he's had a little bit of European exposure. He's also made it into the Ukraine senior team now as well, so he's getting senior national caps as well after being a very effective and successful youth international for them. And again, you can see at this level in the Austrian League and international, he's a very capable centre-back at, the sort of level we normally shop at. At just under 2 metres tall, he is striking. He is an imposing big centre-back, and he's basically every stereotype you would think about a big Ukrainian centre-back. He's maybe not quite as broad, but certainly, does not care about getting himself knocked out. He'll put his head in where it hurts. He'll put his head in where it hurts maybe somebody else as well. He's rated at €3 million. He does have a contract here until 2028, but I'm fairly certain that there's relegation exit clauses on this that could make buying him very, very economic. Probably quite frictionless as well. And I think for him to look to progress his career, even he'll see the competition we've got in the squad already with Vickers and Scales and Trusty and all the rest of it. But I think he'll fancy himself to get significant minutes in the squad, improve himself, show himself to be an effective defender at that Champions League level, and finally get himself into a club where he can win something and he can show, the peak of his powers. That was Slavia Prague he was at before. And again, good European experience with Slavia Prague. This is a team that's normally doing quite well in the Europa League and stuff. So again, a guy if we could get this, think about the amount of money we spent on Lagerbielke and Naroki. I dare say there's probably a transfer fee, if there is a relegation exit clause for Talaverov, that would look like peanuts compared to what we've spent on some of those guys in years gone past. And yeah, it maybe won't quite have the passing acumen that we're looking for yet, because he's still quite raw in the grand scheme of things. But all those other attributes you want your defender to be: brave, focused, determined, he's got all of that in spades. And I think if we could get it done cheap enough, this would be a great transfer to reinforce our centre-back depth chart. Now, there was actually a few Man City links in a few of the players that we're going to feature in the video today, and Jacob Wright is probably one of the more kind of obvious ones when we look at the picture here. He's currently on loan at Norwich. Very similar positional kind of profile to what we've seen from the Shea Charleses and the Josh Brownhills earlier before. A deep line midfielder who likes to be a playmaker, getting on the ball and stuff like that, but has that defensive acumen as well to, be in the right positions, break up play, win successful duels, etc. He's only broke into senior football on loan at Norwich in the last 6 months. Before that, he's been in the Man City youth teams and all the rest of it. But he's made 10 starts, he's came off the bench 5 times, and he's got 4 assists. This is a guy that I would love to see us bring in as a prospect, as a project player, as the club normally tends to say. But he's very young, high ambition, high level of quality, and with him not really broken in yet to senior first team football, is a guy that we could bring into our depth chart of midfield. And it's not going to be a big problem if he's not starting every game. He'll be probably quite willing and able to bide his time to get into the team, etc. But market value currently has him at under €1,000,000, which is certainly under £1,000,000, of course. An England under 20 international with 6 caps gives you a wee bit of the Matt O'Reilly vibes again. But interestingly, looking at more details here, there's an obligation for Norwich to buy with certain conditions. He's made 10 starts there, so I wonder if 10 starts was the condition. Maybe it might have been a little bit higher. So I'm not too sure where he's actually going to end up come the summer. But this is a guy, if he does have a really low transfer value like that, Norwich love to take money off of us, don't they? So if we had to pay a couple of million for him to them, we would, as Celtic fans, maybe grudge giving Norwich a little bit more of our money. But hey, fair play. Kudos to them for being in the right place transfer market-wise to get their hands on a player like this. And if the obligation buy conditions have not been met, he'll be going back to Man City again. We don't actually have where the contract expires there, sadly. Makes me think that it maybe actually expires in the summer, and in which case, this player's maybe somewhat in limbo again coming into this year. And I think for the next midfielder that we bring in, we're either looking for that Josh Brownhill type, which we might already even have signed up, a guy that can come in, can add to the first team and brings qualities and attributes that enhances the picture. But we also do need other midfielders that can play their role in the squad, players as well, unlike the likes of Brownhill, who are very much at the peak of their career, peak of their market value, and only going to decline while they're at us. He's very much at the opposite end of that scale, when we might see him progressing under the wing, under the tutelage of these other players in the squad. And even as I'm describing this out loud, it gives me vibes of Rogic and O'Reilly and Moy, that whole kind of period that we had where, there was experience and there was other players coming in, and that developmental kind of process where as one came in, another one went out, and eventually the older guys left and we had a young guy really rising through the ranks and being that leader in the team. So maybe I'm just being a wee bit sentimental on some of the parallels, but I do really like the look of Jacob Wright, I beg your pardon. And depending on the fee and the contract situation, again, this could be a very attractive player to go after. But all things being equal, and if we're staying sober to, the sort of targets we've already seen Celtic go for, and really the, where in the food chain, where in the pecking order of the individual leagues that we've been scouting, do we find these players? They're generally stat leaders at the top of the food chain players, as we've been calling them here. And if we were to look at top of the food chain level players, generally in the Championship, but ones that are maybe not going to get promoted to the Premier League but have high talent and are very clearly not going to be cheap either because they're high quality players. One of the top players we should be looking at is Borja Sainz. Now again, it's a Norwich player. Do we want to give Norwich more of our money? I'm not too sure. A very versatile attacker, and this guy has techers. This guy scores golazzos. He scores bangers. Predominantly a left winger. Can play attacking mid. Has played a little bit up front as well. He's Spanish. He's 24 years of age. And over the last year for Norwich, he's had 42 starts, 1 game off the bench, scoring 18 goals and picking up 4 assists. And as you can see from his tail of the tape here, yeah, he's had some stinking games where he's really let the side down. He's really not contributed anything. He has been a wee bit hot and cold in that sense. Norwich themselves have been pretty rubbish. But when he goes hot, does he go hot? By the way, this guy, if you've not seen his highlight reel, you will be impressed with him. He scores bangers. He's got a great eye for a pass. He's a very good team player as well. Like a lot of Spanish players are. They're more focused on the team than individual merits for most of the time. But as we've seen him pushed a bit higher up the pitch into the striker area, it's not always been, something that's worked out for him. He does have the ability to play there and score goals like we can see here, but this is a player that's much more comfortable a little bit deeper or in the wider pockets to be able to take a man on or to be able to link up with other players and attack space from a little bit deeper. Hat-trick here against Plymouth. We spoke about the Plymouth defence earlier on, didn't we? But again, like I said, when this guy goes hot, he has went hot. Does he have the ability to step up and be a Champions League level player? I'm not too sure on that, but certainly if we look at the calibre of players we're looking at in terms of talent and the area of world football that they've been kind of living in, a high value Championship player that has this type of output for a team like Norwich who didn't dominate the league, they're not getting promoted, but we're certainly in amongst it for the most part, is certainly a good calibre of a player that we should be looking at depending on the price. Currently rated at €12 million, but we're in the last 12 months of his contract now, and with them not getting promoted, again, an approach from a team like Celtic, I suspect, would very much appeal to him. He can play on the right wing as well, and we've spoke about that with Manhoff. Guy's been able to play on both sides of the pitch. He's a Spain under-19 international, 5 games, 3 goals is actually quite a credible record. And formerly from Bilbao and Alaves, which is like the Basque country in Spain, It's still Spain. The weather's still a lot better, right, than it is in Scotland. But it's not actually that far removed from, like it rains in the north of Spain, in the Basque Country, as it were. So the climate, the conditions, the culture, all that kind of stuff might not be too much of a problem. He's obviously playing in Norwich anyway, which is quite a rural, small city kind of situation anyway. But if Brendan Rodgers believes that this is a guy that has the qualities, pace and power and actual technique and ability that could add to what we have already, a transfer fee of around 12 to 15 million euros I think would be money well spent, and is a guy that equally could add a lot to the Celtic first team next season. Now the next City football group, the next Man City group, CFG link player we've got on the video today is a name that again we're all going to be really familiar with, because this is a transfer, probably like you, I was really hopeful we were going to pull off 3 or 4 years ago, and sadly it never really materialised, it never happened, and that was for Vini Souza. This guy absolutely ripped it up in Belgium before Man City decided, no, we're going to keep you under wraps in our group, we're not going to sell you. Sent him on loan to Spain, didn't really go so well, sold him to Sheffield United, did not do well in the Premier League, they got relegated. But this year, Sheffield United have finished third in the Championship on 90 points, almost got automatic promotion, were very good this year, but they're going into the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, Vini Souza is not going to hang about for a second season in the Championship, you can mark my words on that. This is a highly decorated Brazilian, take-no-nonsense defensive midfielder that does everything that you would want him to do, except maybe score goals and stuff. If we look at over the last year, is this the last year? If we look over the last year for Sheffield United, he's featured 32 times, 4 times off the bench. He's had 1 assist, but otherwise he is a defensive midfielder. This is a guy that is there to break up the play, make a foul when it's needed to be done, and just add that extra physicality into a match to help you get your foot on the ball and control the tempo of play. And, he did really well in Belgium. He went to Spain and he did okay. And Spanish football is a good kind of school of hard knocks for defensive midfield players like this. Then goes to the Premier League, doesn't do that well. Let's actually look at his Premier League scores for a second. It's not actually that bad going. Actually performed quite admirably for Sheffield United, who were bottom, if memory serves me right, in that season, as sometimes a centre-back and as a defensive midfielder, where every minute of every game, all this guy was doing was defending and defending and defending. So he's had a really strong kind of upbringing in football. I mentioned before he's a highly decorated Brazilian midfielder before coming to Europe. Sadly, the scores and the data isn't here for it, but he won the Copa Libertadores, he won everything in Brazil, he won all the continental competitions, their equivalent of the Champions League with Flamengo, and was like a super hot prospect coming out of Brazil, which is why Man City bought him, obviously. But building upon a good season in La Liga, that good season that we've seen, of course, there in the Premier League, before this year in the Championship, again, really following suit. He has only improved, he has only got better as a player over the last 3 years when we've not had him, we've not bought him in, sadly. And this is a guy that if Sheffield United do not get promoted, bet your bottom dollar, he's going to be telling his agent, SOS, get me out of here. Now, could he end up on the continent or maybe even in the Premier League with somebody else? Possible. Not certain, I would say. At 14 million euros, he will not come cheap, but he is sincerely would fix a lot of the problems that we have in midfield. And I would pay the money. I'd have paid the money back then, I would pay the money now. His contract is up in 2027, so if they don't get promoted, I can't say it enough, he is just going to be itching to get a move. And when we consider the money that we spent on Engels and Bernardo and the sort of level of transfer fee that we're getting into, to spend this type of money for a guy that is a proven winner at a very high level, and for the last 3 years across 3 different levels of European football, has seen himself be competitive, has seen himself progress, this would just be an absolute home run of a defensive midfielder buy for me. So if we want this move to happen, we need Sheffield United to not do well in the playoffs. So if you want to root against them, there's your number one reason to do it. And beyond that, guys, to be honest with you, in the Championship, I think it's quite slim pickings of guys that, there's maybe some guys I'm not familiar with, maybe younger players that are kind of breaking through and showing some glimpses and some minutes that they've been getting. Maybe there's another kind of Matt O'Reilly type guy in League One or whatever floating around that's just not on my radar or whatever. But when we're looking at these types of players, the kind of mirror image or the other side of the coin is very often Premier League players that are getting relegated and going down. Now, this player has already announced that he's going to be leaving his current club in the summer, and as soon as I seen it, the first thing I thought is, you just know he's going to be linked to Celtic if we don't actually go on and sign him, and that is Jamie Vardy. He's currently 38 years of age, and for the personality, for the acumen he's got, for the experience he offers and he gives, I would probably take him for a 1-year contract. This season in the Premier League, in his own words, Leicester have been a shit show. They've really let the fans down. It's all been on the players. He is 38, but, so he can't really take too much of the actual criticism for it or whatever. But at 38, at the worst team in the league, 33 starts, 8 goals, 3 assists. Really, what more could you ask for? He is now in the twilight of his career. He's had wild success with Leicester, as we all know. Good Champions League and Europa League campaigns, as well as winning the Premier League and the FA Cup under Brendan Rodgers, of course. And it feels like now he's either going to come to a team like Celtic and try and get some European exposure, go and win some more titles, or maybe he goes to America. It'll be one of those two moves that happens. And when you look at our current forward system, he is 38, right? So the miles that you're going to get out of him this season are probably going to be quite sparing compared to what we would want. But it'll probably be a free transfer. The wages probably won't be too much of an issue. And he is nippy. He's fast, He is still a bit of a presser. And if we were to control and manage his minutes to thoroughly optimise him, number one, he's a great guy to maybe try and develop some of the younger players that are in the building in the B team and all the rest of it, as well as some of the players that we've got that are rising into the peak of their career. And this is a guy that if you ever had to bring him in for any situation in the last 10 minutes of a game, or if you had to start him because other players were, injured or suspended or needing the reprieve, mentality-wise, he is going to be there 110%. Technique-wise, he has got exactly what is required to get the job done. And as long as we don't need to rely on a guy like this week in, week out, it doesn't need to be a backwards transfer or one that's like, oh, I can't believe we're signing 38-year-old Jamie Vardy. I'm not buzzing for it, I'm not promoting it or anything like that, but it just felt like quite an obvious one that we will be linked to, and I just wanted to put kind of my 2 cents on it, as it were, as I think if he was properly managed and he wasn't going to be like a best 11 type player, it could be a really interesting move. Highly decorated player, as we spoke about already. Contract is up in the summer, and there's not really too much more that needs to be said about it. Now, when we're thinking top of the food chain, guys that will sincerely lift the level into Champions League level of what we are missing in any area of the team. For the next player, we're going to be looking at centre-back, right? Because as I have long said on this channel and any other place that will give me a microphone, the thing with Liam Scales is that replacing him or making someone or bringing someone in who's clearly better than him is going to be expensive, right? The number one candidate I would have to do that is currently getting relegated from the Premier League with Southampton, and that is Taylor Harwood-Bellis. Now, I know what you're maybe going to say if you're familiar with this guy, we can't afford him. Yes, this guy is going to be super expensive. He has been on the cusp of playing Premier League football so many times and then ended up back in the Championship. He's had his season in the Premier League. He's done actually pretty well, but Southampton are going to get relegated. And I'm hearing some noises that some teams might want to sign him, but it's not anyone stellar. There's not much concrete stuff going in, out and around there at the moment. He's played for Anderlecht in Belgium. He's came through the Man City Youth Academy. He's done everything at England Youth International level you could possibly think of. He did great in the Championship with Burnley, helped them get promoted with Vincent Kompany. Vincent Kompany didn't want to keep him. He went to Southampton, got them promoted out of the Championship, did amazing. They kept him finally. He had his year in the Premier League last year, like we're mentioning here, and they're on their way back down. He's contracted until 2028 as well, so this is just not going to be a cheap move by any stretch of the imagination. If we look at his Premier League performances over the last year, I think this is pretty good going, considering Southampton have been conceding goals for fun. He's a ball-playing centre-back as well, actually getting into the England senior international setup now. I don't think he's been actually capped, but he's been in the squad, as you can see there. This guy's great on the ball, can play left centre-back, right centre-back. He's not massive, he's not a big centre-back. He's quick, but not lightning quick, but he's quick. And he's got such a great upbringing, such a great footballing pedigree, and he's done so much in the game. And it really, maybe it's just the Premier League at the moment is maybe just a little bit beyond his grasp. Oh no, he's played and scored for England against Ireland. Totally forgot about that. And sometimes these players need to make that step to a team like Celtic, where they need to get used to that pressure of having to win every game every week, delivering trophies, winning crunch games, and ultimately getting Champions League experience rather than Championship experience, which he's got too much of probably in his own opinion. An interesting thing about Taylor Harwood-Bellis is he's actually married to the daughter of Roy Keane. So, maybe Big Roy could do as a turn and tell him, hey Taylor, this is probably a good move for you to make. Even if it was like a loan with a buy option, I would be so on board for any move that the team could make, the club could make, to bring Harwood-Bellis into the squad, because he would be the best defender in the squad. He's rated at 25 million euros. I suspect there's probably a relegation clause in his contract. Maybe it is for the 25 million euros. Maybe it's for something like 18 million euros or pounds or whatever. I don't know. Whatever the price is, I would pay it. Because if you can get this guy to be proven at Champions League level, you might not necessarily sell him back to England. But as we've seen with other players like Fikayo Tomori and one or two even Scottish players, the continent is very willing to take English and Scottish players abroad now, because they're getting much better at different styles of football compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago or whatever. So this is a player that could be a captain type player at Celtic. He's a leader. He's very experienced. He's won tons of stuff. The 2 League Cups, I think, is maybe a Man City thing, so I'm not sure we really credit him with that. But a Euro under 21s, he's won the Championship at least once, if not twice. Under 21 Premier League, English Youth League and everything as well. So a guy like honestly ticks every box you would want and then some. But those players that are quicker than Scales, that are better on the ball than Scales, that have better defensive IQ than Scales, cost this type of money. And if we're going to get a proper upgrade in defence, we're not going to, let's just buy Trusty for 6 million, buy Naroki for 4 million, and Lagerbielke for 3, and cross our fingers and toes one of them comes good. Let's just go and buy Taylor Harwood-Bellis. And I can hear he's all shouting at me now, that's never going to happen, Quinny, he's too expensive. I know, but I'm putting the case out there for it. And if we are going to spend proper money on a defensive upgrade, he has got to be tippy top of the list, because he is in the market. He will want big wages. That's maybe the number one stumbling block if we can get the transfer fee balanced out. But one of the clubs we are often, benchmarked against in recent years is Ajax and Benfica, all these clubs, but particularly Ajax, because they recently got, when I say recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, got to a Champions League semi-final, right? Now, one of the things about that Ajax team that we don't really talk about too much in the Celtic circles is right before that season, they spent 25, 30 million euros. Big amount of money. Big amount of money for them. Big amount of money for many teams, but a big amount of money for Ajax on Dusan Tadic. You probably never heard of him. He was at Southampton. They got relegated. They'd done a little bit of stuff around Europe before at Southampton. Did nothing in the Premier League. And I think they bought him at like 27, 28 years of age. And he took them to another level. And he was a huge player for them in that Champions League campaign. In a similar kind of mould, I would be very proactive on Celtic trying to bring in Kamaldeen Sulemana. This is a guy that Southampton paid big money for, that when he was coming through, I think it was at Rennes in France, was marking off the scale in terms of being a Neymar, a Jeremy Doku level winger for penetrating into the box, successful take-ons on the dribble, 1v1, being two-footed, just being an exciting attack-based flair player. It's just not worked out for him in English football, quite simply. He went to Southampton, they got relegated, he stayed, they couldn't really get rid of him because it was big transfer fee, big wages. They got promoted, they kept him, and he's not really played that much in the Premier League. He's not really touched the sides. They're getting relegated again. And with his transfer value dropping, he's now at 13 million euros. His contract is up in 2027. And this is like a Dusan Tadic type of signing that Celtic could really use to help lift us to that kind of Champions League level. Now, there's a bit of speculation in on that because he's not actually been performing that well for the last year or two, but neither had Dusan Tadic. Now, maybe he was a little bit older, a bit more of a veteran, and could acclimatise to the Ajax situation when they bought him, maybe quite well. But I think this is a guy that we could have that type of success with, and because of the previous highs that he's had here, where Southampton paid 25 million euros for him, where Rennes paid 17 million euros for him to get him from Nordisland. He's from that kind of whole right to dream kind of setup back there. I didn't realise that, or if I had, I'd forgotten it. So he's had 42 million euros in transfer fees already spent on him. If we got this guy back on his feet, performing well in the Champions League, again, this is a guy the club could make money on. This is a guy that if you spend that 13 to 15 million euros on him, take the chance and really make sure that you put a good environment around this guy to get the best out of him. We can win by getting this guy playing for us on the pitch, and then the club can win by selling him on again later on to someone else. And it's this type of transfer that I really hope to see in this transfer window. A statement one, a Champions League level signing of a guy that will make us more competitive at that level. And the last player we've got in the video today is in that same kind of mould of, yeah, we probably need to spend a couple of quid on him, but this guy is an international player. He's played Premier League football, he's got good experience, and he's still got plenty to give. He's not over the hill or, anything like that. And that is Wout Faes, or Wout Faes, I'm not too sure how you say his name here. Again, a former Brendan Rodgers player at Leicester. They're getting relegated, 27 years of age. And this guy is really comfortable at centre-back in a variety of different formations. 3 at the back, 4 at the back, you name it, he can play it. And the Premier League for Leicester, who have been hemorrhaging goals left, right and centre, I think his scoring profile is decent enough here. In the Championship for Leicester, when they got promoted, he was an absolute beast. He was an absolute phenomenon. Not just being a defensive powerhouse, but being on the ball and actually building up play and doing all that kind of stuff for Leicester, who at that time under Enzo Maresca, it's a very possession-based team, as you guys will know. But he's also a proper full-on Belgium international, where we see him regularly feature for Belgium now on a consistent basis. And when you look at his scoring profile here for the Belgium national team, in some really tough games against some really tough opponents, and some pretty good performances and some good wins for himself. Maybe the the Luxembourg and the Azerbaijan ones here are a little bit of an outlier, but the Belgium national team, we know all about that. Brendan Rodgers knows all about Wout Faes as well. And again, this is a guy that has the pedigree of everything that we're looking for in the next defender we're looking to bring to the team. His transfer value says 20 million euros. There's no way anyone is paying 20 million euros for Wout Faes, getting relegated from the Premier League with Leicester. He does have another 2 years on his contract. It's up in 2027. I dare say he's got a relegation release in there somewhere. Highly decorated Belgium youth international and getting significant caps now at the senior team, as we can see here. And yeah, he's played in France, he's played in Belgium, Holland. He's had a good career for a 27-year-old, quite a veteran at the age of 27, you would say. He's a Belgian champion and obviously won the championship last year with Leicester under Enzo Maresca, so he's got a little bit of that winner's mentality. He's got a little bit of proof of concept there that he can be at a dominant team in the league, be ball dominant, be possession based, and still be effective at all aspects of the game that we would be asking for him to contribute with. Now, I think the number one conundrum I've got at this point in the video is, do we actually add Harwood Bellis into the target list, because he's going to be so expensive. He's an England international now, so it's hard to think that we will push the boat out and make a deal like that happen. But I'm going to be a dreamer, and I'm going to add him onto the list. Now, I know I said this last week, but that was because I thought we were going to do Asia this week, Japan and Korea, before the Josh Brownhill and the Million Manhoff links came up. So we'll almost certainly, unless there's something else happens in the rumour mill, we'll do J and K League next week. And then once we've done that, we'll be able to come back and look at the players here. Now, we're currently at 91 players, right? So by the next video we do, we'll certainly be at 100 players profiled here across a number of different positions, transfer values, ages, leagues, profiles, styles of play. So many interesting players we've looked at over this series so far. I can't believe it's almost 100 players already, and I'm rather looking forward to us doing that. I've really enjoyed a lot of you guys keeping up with this series and then getting back to me about telling me players you've watched that we featured on the video. And I've got to say, every player that I've featured that you guys have then went on to watch, you've all been giving me the thumbs up and saying, well found, Quinny, he looks like the perfect sort of guy we should be going for. So let's hope Brendan Rodgers is still subscribed to the channel. Let's hope the recruitment team are subscribed to the channel as well, and they've been catching these videos when they come out every Wednesday, because I have a lot of fun doing them, and it seems to be you guys have a lot of fun watching them as well. On screen and now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to get into the comment section on this one, guys, and let me know your thoughts and feelings. If you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all that good stuff, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Hail, hail, and on the hoops.